Hey guys, Bicebump here, bringing you this Dragonflight Frost TK beginner guide. This video is for everyone out there who's either picking up the Frost TK for the first time in Dragonflight or coming back to it after some downtime. I intend to, in a comprehensive and hopefully detailed enough way, cover the Frost TK rotation, opener, and some very simple talent builds. Getting into it, I think the first thing we need to discuss is the Frost TK resources. So you essentially have two primary resources here. You have the runes, those are those blue skulls that you can see below your character portrait, and we have runic power, that's the bar above it. Runes are used on the majority of our spells and abilities. Once you use it, it will recharge passively over time, taking 10 seconds to fully recharge and be usable again. This is decreased by haste, so at 100% haste it takes 5 seconds. So the more haste you get, the more often you can use abilities that cost runes. Furthermore, an interesting aspect is that runes can only recharge at a maximum of 3 at a time. So if you spend all of them, you will see that only 3 of them actually recharge and the other 3 sit there and wait for their turn, in a sense. This is important because it means that if you want to maximize the amount of resources you get, you only need to have 3 runes that are off cooldown. Spending runes generate runic power at a rate of 1 rune, giving 10 runic power. And we can have a maximum of 100 runic power, increased by talents and then Runeforges and that kind of thing. There is this kind of synergy between the runes and runic power. So obviously runes generate runic power, but spending runic power also generates rune through the runic empowerment spell you can see up here. That gives a chance to just fully generate a rune whenever you use runic power. Now, let's talk about the core rotation, and I think it's relatively simple. Frost TK is quite known for having a simple core rotation, and it consists of 4 spells in total. We have Obliterate, Frost Strike, Howling Blast, and Remorseless Winter. Obliterate is your primary rune spender. Costs 2 rune, deals a good chunk of physical damage. It can, via talents and procs, deal an absolute ton of damage, and in certain builds it's like 50% of overall damage, so it can be a significant portion of your overall damage throughput. Frost Strike is the way you spend runic power in single target. Quite a simple spell. It does have some interaction with talents, but that's for more advanced guides, I say. When you use Obliterate, you have a chance to get a proc called Rhyme. This means that your Howling Blast, which generally costs a single rune, now is free of charge and deals a significant more damage. Howling Blast is pretty much only ever used with these Rhyme procs, so you kind of do rotation with Obliterate and Frost Strike, and you get Rhyme proc, bam, use it on Howling Blast. It also applies to a dot called Frost Fever. This is the only way you can apply Frost Fever, but it's really quite passive, so you don't need to care about it at all. You know, if it drops, just ignore it, wait for your Rhyme proc, and then you press up Howling Blast. That's not 100% true, but that's for more advanced video. Finally, we have Remorseless Winter. This deals damage around you in like a storm. It has a 20-second cooldown, and we press it whenever it comes up. And there's a lot of interaction with it in talent tree that goes into more advanced part of Frost TK. But if you're just doing basic rotation, it's press the button every 20 seconds. So to recap, we spend our runes on Obliterate, we spend our runic power on Frost Strike, we spend any procs of Rhyme on Howling Blast, and we press Remorseless Winter on cooldown. Very simple, that's the basic rotation. Now, there's one more proc that comes into play here called Killing Machine. Killing Machine essentially means that your critical auto attacks have a probability to make your next Obliterate a guaranteed crit. And it also means that with the Frost Reaper talent, it will deal frost damage. This is a significant damage increase for your Obliterates. The fact there's a crit, obviously twice the damage, but when it's frost damage, it means that Scales of Mastery goes around the enemy's physical damage reduction. It's really big. Essentially, what you want to do is consume these procs as soon as possible. And that's kind of like one of your highest priorities. So as soon as you get a Killing Machine proc, spend it on Obliterate, right? When it comes to prioritizing, like overcapping, you will overcap in the rotation, by the way. You get too much resources. You don't want... it's fine to overcap on runic power. That's the baseline idea. So if you're overcapping runic power, don't worry too much about it. It's fine. You want to prioritize spending those runes on Obliterate because it deals so much damage. Great. So that's the core rotation. Let's talk about what happens when you go into AoE. And interestingly enough, or maybe not interestingly enough, for Frost TK, very little changes. The only addition, the only like baseline addition comes into the form of Death and Decay. Right, a 30-second cooldown, you pop it down, it makes your Obliterate cleave. It's just something you use whenever it comes up in AoE. Yeah. Other than that, you will deal passive AoE damage through your Howling Blasts and through your Remorseless Winter, and that's how you do the majority of damage. Now, I do feel like we also need to talk about, so a lot of the extra part of the Frost DK kit comes from talents, and this is true for our AoE rotation mainly. We can pick up Glacial Advance, which will replaces Frost DK's kind of location rotation whenever we fight 2 more targets as the Runic Power Spender. Yeah. So if you have a build with Glacial Advance, you're in AoE, instead of spending Runic Power on Frost Strike, you spend it on Glacial Advance. Cool. That is kind of the core. The majority of spells you will be pressing in the majority of talent builds that are viable currently. Let's move on to how you deal with your talents, because this is where the complexity of Frost shows and where it gets a little bit more difficult than this just 4-button spam of reacting to procs. Yeah. First of all, we have Pillar of Frost. This is your kind of primary buff cooldown, and it should be used whenever it comes up. The effective cooldown will start at 1 minute, but you pick up cooldown reduction so that it goes down to like 40 seconds. Just press it whenever it comes up. You know, buff yourself off, just deals more damage. We have Cold Heart, which is a talent. This is primarily a single target nuke, but we can use it as a 2-target nuke if we talent into it on the class side, so that Chains of Eyes hits 2 targets. Essentially, it means that our usual slow spell, Chains of Eyes, stacks up over time, and when we don't use it, it kind of consumes all the stacks and deals a ton of damage. Easiest way to use this is to just wait for it to get to 20 stacks and then press it. Yeah, there's some more min-max things, but that's the easiest way to use it as a beginner, I'd say. We have Chill Streak, 45-second cooldown, throws a snowball at our enemies to bounce around. Just use this whenever it comes up, whenever you're fighting more than 1 target. So don't use it on single target, but on 2 or more targets, you send it. It bounces around, deals a lot of damage. We also have Frostworm's Fury. This is one of like almost a capstone. It's a huge dragon, comes down and deals a ton of AoE damage. You want to kind of save this for whenever you fight a big pack of mobs. If you're questing, pull up a lot of mobs, send up the Frostworm, is just going to obliterate them. In raid, try to time it for whenever there are ad spawns. In Mythic class, try to use it when there's like a big pull coming in. Yeah. We also have Abomination Limb in the class tree. This should be used either to kind of just deal AoE damage or to help your raid group up enemies. Yeah. We have Empower Rune Weapon. This is quite a special spell because it gives you lots of haste, lots of resources. Ideally, it should be timed with your other cooldowns, especially Pillar of Frost. It matters what final talents you pick up, but generally time it with your Pillar of Frost, yeah? Now, the final 2 talents I'm going to talk about are Obliteration and Breath of Synagosa, and these ones kind of define the build you will be running with. Breath of Synagosa, when you activate it, you breathe in a cone in front of you, and it depletes your runic power every second, 16 every second. The whole game here is to keep that up for as long as possible. And if you're good at it, it's going to be a minute plus on average. It's a really long time. The whole idea is that when you press Breath of Synagosa, you won't be spending your runic power on anything else, right? If you press Frost Strike or Glacial Advance when your breath is up, it's going to ruin your DPS, yeah? Once breath is up, you only press spells that spend runes like Remorseless Winter and Obliterate. It's primarily just going to be pressing lots of Obliterate and then Howling Blast when you get Rhyme procs. That's like the rotation once you've used it. It does interact significantly with Empower Rune Weapon, because Empower Rune Weapon gives a lot of haste and lots of resources, which helps keep up breath. So the general idea is to use breath, and then when you feel like you're going low on resources, you press Empower Rune Weapon. Another cooldown, which is also important here, is Horn of Winter. This gives you 2 runes and 25 runic power on a button press, and it should use in a similar way. So you use your Breath Synagosa, you press Horn of Winter to get more resources to keep it going. Alright, that's a very easy Breath Synagosa view, right? Try and time it with Pillar of Frost, otherwise it's all about, keeping it up for as long as possible. The final cooldown we're going to talk about is Obliteration. And this is quite special because Obliteration means that when you press a Pillar of Frost, if you press Frost Strike, Howling Blast, or Glacial Advance, you get a guaranteed proc of Killing Machine. The whole idea here is to generate as many of those procs as possible and consume them as quickly as possible. What you get is this kind of weave rotation where you press Frost Strike, Howling Blast, or Glacial Advance to generate a proc of Killing Machine, and then you consume it with Obliterate, and then you press Frost Strike, Howling Blast, Killing Machine, or Glacial Advance to generate another one, and then you consume it again. Right? So every other GCD is consuming a proc or generating a proc, and the whole idea is just to do that the entire rotation. The one tip I can give here is that you don't want to use any other spells when the Obliteration window is active. Like if Remorseless Winter is coming off cooldown, ignore it. If anything else becomes relevant, ignore it. You should either be generating a proc Killing Machine or consuming it. Finally, obviously, there's a priority here. So we press Frost Strike in single target if we can't really do anything else. Howling Blast when you have a Rhyme proc. Glacial Advance in AoE when we don't have a Rhyme proc. There's some details to that, but I'll get to that in the advanced section. There's like Unleashed Frenzy and some other procs we need to play around, but I don't feel like that's important for a beginner guide. The important aspect is that you're weaving properly and not spending any other spells in that window. Cool. Let's talk about the rotation. No, sorry, the openers here. So we have the opener for Breath of Synagosa here. Quite simple. There are varieties where you do triple Obliterate to start, but I like the Remorseless Winter as your first button. Just follow that and it's going to set you up for a nice breath window on the pool. For Obliteration, here's the opener. This is quite special because we are, as you can see, using a naked Howling Blast to generate the first Killing Machine. This is essentially we use Howling Blast without the Rhyme proc. And the reason we do it because we don't have enough runic power to use a Frost Strike, right? So we have to use something else. That's just the most efficient way to get started. Cool. For AoE, the one thing that changes is that for the Obliteration opener, you use Deafening Decay after that Pillar of Frost macro. And then for Breath of Synagosa, the same thing. You use Deafening Decay after you activate Breath of Synagosa. Cool. That's the rotation, cooldowns, and opener. Let's talk about some talents. So I'd say there are 3 primary builds for Raid. We have Breath of Synagosa, Dual Wheel Obliteration, and Two-Hander Obliteration. Breath of Synagosa is likely going to be the meta one under specific scenarios. So if you can keep your breath up for more than 1 minute for a specific boss, Breath of Synagosa is most likely going to be best. However, if there are any mechanics or things that force you to stop your breath, it won't be the best build, right? Also, if you can soak magic damage abilities with Anti-Magic Shell and MZ with Assimilation, it's going to be even better. So you can, Breath of Synagosa is good whenever there's enough space to use a very long breath window. Dual Obliteration, the middle one here, that is the whack-a-mole build. It's incredibly proc heavy. You get loads of proc all the time. It has a lot of damage all the time. It's very constant in its damage profile because it's running Shattering Blade, which means a Frost Strike can deal lots of damage. This is the build when you kind of like have constant uptime on the boss. I can just, keep hitting at it. And then finally, two-hand obliteration. This has a bit more higher burst windows, like every 30 to 40 seconds, and really good two-target cleave. It's a bit of a preference. All these are viable, but one of them is going to be best for any specific encounter. Good, right. So for move class, I would say the two primary one. We have the breath build again. This is for when you're running with a very coordinated group that can pull around you, so that every 2 minutes, your breath is just going to obliterate a huge pack. We have two-hander oblit. This is much better for pogs, and generally, when you're running a not so coordinated group, it has very short cooldown windows, and it just does well overall. Right, finally, I think in a beginner guide, I need to discuss Runeforges as well, because it does matter depending on build. If you're running dual breath, you want to run Rune of Hysteria and Rune of Fallen Crusader. Dual wield obliteration, you want to run Rune of Bracerize and Rune of Fallen Crusader. And two-hand obliteration, it's just Rune of Fallen Crusader. So those are the three options there. All right, hopefully that was digestible and helpful for you guys out there who want to play the Frost DK. Let me know down in the comments what you thought about the video, if it helped you get into the Frost DK. Do leave an upvote, downvote, depending on what you thought about this video. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.